My daughter-in-law handed me a list of rules to see my grandson, so I gave my son an envelope. My name is Margaret. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 31 years building a life for my son, only to be handed a laminated list of 17 rules for how I was allowed to love my own grandson. The list was in a clear plastic sleeve. Patricia had highlighted certain items in yellow. Rule number 4 said, I was not permitted to use the nickname I had called my son since the day he was born. Rule number 11 said, I could not bring homemade food into their home. Rule number 16, and I want you to really sit with this one, said that all visits must be pre-approved in writing, via email, at least 10 business days in advance. 10 business days. To see a 7-month-old baby. I read the list standing in Patricia's kitchen, the one with the subway tile backsplash I had helped pay for. I could hear little Eli gurgling in his bouncy seat in the next room. I could smell him, that warm, powdery, irreplaceable smell of your grandchild. And I was holding a laminated piece of paper that told me I had to file paperwork to be near him. I set the list on the counter. I smoothed it flat with my palm. I looked at my son Derek, standing by the refrigerator with his arms folded, not meeting my eyes. And I thought, okay, if this is how we're doing this. I said nothing else that afternoon. I drove home. I sat in my car in my driveway for 22 minutes, and then I went inside and I started putting together an envelope. Keep watching, because what was in that envelope changed everything. Before we get into the rest of this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I don't need numbers for the sake of numbers. I need the people who understand. And if you're one of them, you already know. Drop your city and your local time in the comments right now. I love knowing where in the world people are when they find stories like mine. There's something about knowing someone in Auckland or in Manitoba or in a small town in Tennessee is sitting with this at 2 in the morning, it makes me feel less alone. I hope it does the same for you. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Let me take you back to September of 1993. Derek was 4 years old and we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on Ellison Street in Dayton, Ohio. His father, my ex-husband Robert, had left 8 months earlier. Not with drama, not with shouting, just with a single suitcase and a truck that came on a Tuesday while I was at work. I came home to half-empty closets and a note on the kitchen table that said he needed to find himself. Derek didn't understand where his father went. For weeks, every time he heard a car in the parking lot, he would run to the window. Every time. I'd watch him from the kitchen doorway. This small, round-faced boy pressing his hands against the glass, and I would will myself not to cry. I told myself it didn't hurt. That worked approximately 0% of the time. I was working 2 jobs then. Days at Harmon Office Supply where I answered phones and did filing, and Tuesday through Saturday evenings at a place called Apple Tree Family Restaurant on Route 35 where I served pie and decaf to people who barely looked at me. Between those 2 jobs and Derek's daycare and the rent and the electric bill, there was almost nothing left. Some months I made choices between groceries and gas. You know the kind of choices I mean. But what I gave Derek, what I poured into that boy from the very beginning, was presence. I was at every school play, even when I had to trade shifts to do it. I was at every Little League game, sitting in the aluminum bleachers with sunscreen on my nose and a cooler of Capri Suns. When he was 9 and broke his arm falling out of the oak tree in Mrs. Patterson's backyard, I sat in that Cincinnati Children's Hospital waiting room for 4 hours, and I held his hand through every X-ray, and I drove him home at midnight singing along to the radio to keep him calm. When his voice changed and he got awkward and quiet and stopped knowing how to talk to me, I just waited. I made his favorite dinner, chicken and noodles, from scratch, not from a can, and I put it on the table, and I waited. He always came back to the table. Robert drifted back in and out over the years. He remarried twice. He sent birthday cards sometimes. One year he forgot Derek's birthday entirely. Derek was 12, and I watched my son check the mailbox every afternoon for 2 weeks before quietly stopping. I told myself it didn't hurt, watching that. But there is a particular kind of pain that comes from watching your child absorb someone else's carelessness, and it doesn't go away. It just changes shape. By the time Derek graduated from Centennial High School in 2007, I had been saving for 4 years. I had a savings account at Fifth Third Bank with $14,200 in it, earmarked specifically for his college. I'd been putting in whatever I could, sometimes $50, sometimes $200 when I picked up extra shifts. I gave him that money. I sat across from him at our kitchen table, and I pushed an envelope across to him, and I said, "This is for you, for school, for your future." He cried. Derek was not a boy who cried easily, and he cried. He hugged me for a long time. He went to Ohio State. He studied business. He called me every Sunday without fail until his sophomore year, when he met Patricia Holt at a party in her sorority house in February of 2009. I want to be careful here, because I am not a person who believes in villains. I think people are complicated, and I think circumstances shape behavior, and I think very few people wake up in the morning and decide to be cruel. So I will tell you what I observed about Patricia, and I will let you draw your own conclusions. Patricia came from money. Not enormous wealth, not the kind you read about, but comfortable, generational, Northeast Ohio country club money. Her father, Gerald Holt, was a corporate attorney in Medina. Her mother, Connie, did interior design and served on the boards of 3 different charitable foundations. They had a lake house, they had matching Volvos, they had the kind of effortless confidence that comes from never having had to worry about the electric bill. They were not unkind to me. That is important to say. They were perfectly pleasant when we all met at Derek and Patricia's engagement dinner at a restaurant in Columbus called the Florentine, where the cheapest entree was $42 and I quietly ordered the pasta. They shook my hand. They smiled. They included me in the toast. But I noticed things. I noticed that when wedding vendors were discussed, it was always Connie who had the connection, the recommendation, the contact. I noticed that when the question of rehearsal dinner location came up, my suggestion of a nice Italian place I'd found in Dublin was politely set aside in favor of a venue Connie had already booked. I noticed that in the seating chart for the reception, I was at table 7. The Holts were at table 1, 2, and 3. I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was that Derek was happy, and he did seem happy. Patricia was smart, and pretty, and organized in a way that Derek, who had always needed a certain amount of external structure, seemed to respond well to. They bought a house in Worthington. They got a dog. A golden retriever named Biscuit. They sent Christmas cards with coordinated outfits. From the outside, it looked like everything had worked out. I should have paid more attention to what it looked like from the inside. The first sign that something was shifting came at Thanksgiving of 2019. Derek and I had a tradition. We'd had it since he left for college, where he would come to my house the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, just the 2 of us, and I would make the chicken and noodles, and we'd watch whatever game was on and talk. It wasn't complicated, it was just ours. That year, he called me on the Monday before to say he couldn't make it Wednesday. Patricia's parents were coming in early, and they needed to be at the house. "Of course," I said. "No problem. We'll see you Thursday, Mom." "I know, I'll be there." I made the chicken and noodles anyway. I ate them alone at my kitchen table watching a nature documentary about migratory birds. I told myself it was fine. Thursday came. I drove to Worthington with my sweet potato casserole and my cranberry sauce, both made from scratch. Patricia answered the door in an apron that still looked somehow expensive and told me the casserole was fine, but they'd already made a sweet potato dish so mine would just go on the side table. The Holts were already there, Gerald and Connie and Patricia's sister Melissa and Melissa's husband Todd. They had a charcuterie board. There was wine from a vineyard I'd never heard of. I found Derek in the kitchen and hugged him. He hugged me back, but briefly, the way you hug someone when you're in the middle of something else. At dinner, the conversation mostly ran through the Holts. Gerald talked about a case he'd been involved with. Connie talked about a renovation at the lake house. I tried twice to join conversations, and both times the topic moved on before I finished my thought. Not with hostility, but with the casual efficiency of people who are used to directing the flow. I ate my turkey. I complimented the stuffing. I helped clear the table. I drove home at 8:15. It was fine. Everything was fine. Except that after that Thanksgiving, the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving never came back. And that was just the beginning. They announced Patricia's pregnancy in March of 2021 on a video call that I hadn't known was going to also include Gerald and Connie. They were on the screen when I joined, already smiling, and Patricia was holding a small chalkboard sign that said Baby Holt Carmichael, arriving October 2021. Everyone cheered. I cheered too. That pregnancy was the thing Patricia had been waiting for, I think. Not in a sinister way. I genuinely believe she loved that baby before he arrived, but in the way that having a child can sometimes clarify for certain people exactly who they want at the center of their world and who they want at the edges. The Holts were at the center. They were there for every appointment Patricia mentioned. When Patricia had a difficult second trimester and needed bed rest for 2 weeks, Connie came and stayed with them. I offered too. I called Derek and said I could come. I could cook. I could help around the house. Derek said they had it covered. Mom, Patricia really just wants it to be calm. I said I understood. I drove to Worthington anyway one Saturday and left a casserole on the front porch because I couldn't think of anything else to do with what I was feeling. Patricia texted me to say thank you. The casserole was delicious. I don't know if they ate it. Aisha Lai arrived on October 14th, 2021, 7 pounds 2 ounces, with Derek's ears and Patricia's dark hair. I saw a photo before I saw the baby himself. Patricia posted on Instagram first, which I found out later is normal now, but which felt at the time like something else. I was in the 3rd hour of sitting in my living room waiting for someone to call when the notification came up on my phone. Derek called me 90 minutes after the Instagram post. He sounded exhausted and over the moon, the way new fathers do. "He's perfect, Mom," he said. "He's just perfect." "When can I come?" I asked. I tried to ask it casually. There was a small pause. "We're going to take a week or two to settle in. We'll let you know." The Holts were at the hospital that evening. Patricia posted a photo of Connie holding Eli in the hospital room. Gerald was in the background, grinning. I know this because I looked at the Instagram photo more than I should have. I came to meet Eli on October 29th, 15 days after he was born. I held him for 40 minutes and I talked to him quietly about everything I could think of: the oak tree on Ellison Street, his dad's Little League games, the chicken and noodles. Patricia sat across from me, watching with an expression I couldn't quite read, and Derek was in the kitchen making coffee. Eli gripped my finger. He had that grip that newborns have, the reflex grip that doesn't mean anything neurologically but feels like it means everything. I told myself, this is enough. This is going to be enough. I should have known then that Patricia had already been thinking about the list. If you've ever been made to feel like an outsider in your own family, I want you to drop a candle in the comments right now. Just a candle. Because what I'm about to describe in the next part of this story is something I've never talked about out loud, and I need to know I'm not telling it into empty air. The months after Eli's birth had a pattern. I would reach out, a text, a call, an email, and I would receive a response, eventually, that was pleasant but vague. "Things are hectic right now. We'll figure out a time soon. Patricia's been really tired." I would wait. I would try again. Between October 2021 and March 2022, I saw Eli 5 times. The Holts, from what I could piece together from Patricia's Instagram and from things Derek let slip in conversation, were there almost every weekend. I called Derek in January of 2022. I asked him directly, "Is something wrong? Have I done something to upset Patricia?" He sighed. That particular sigh, long, slightly deflated, the sound of a man who is caught between two things and has chosen one, I had not heard from my son before, and I hope I never hear it again. "Mom, she just needs space. She's figuring out her rhythm as a mother. It's not personal." "It feels personal, Derek." "It's not. Just give it time." I gave it time. I gave it February. I drove to Worthington on a Sunday in early March, unannounced, because I'd made a birthday cake for Eli's upcoming 5-month milestone. I know that isn't a standard thing to celebrate, but I had been so far away from him that I needed a reason, any reason to show up. I bought supplies at Kroger, and I spent Saturday afternoon making a small yellow cake with cream cheese frosting, and I drove it over with a balloon that said 5 months of wonderful. Patricia answered the door. She looked at the cake. She looked at me, and she said, with complete pleasantness, "You should have called first, Margaret. We have a whole schedule we're working around for Eli." I apologized. I gave her the cake. I stood on the front step and held my grandson for 11 minutes while Patricia stood in the doorway, and then she said he needed to go down for his nap. On the drive home, I had to pull over on Route 161 and sit for a while. 3 weeks later, the list arrived. Not in the mail, in person. I had been invited, actually invited, with 2 weeks' notice, a proper scheduled visit, and I had arrived at 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday with a bag of age-appropriate toys I'd selected carefully at Target. Patricia met me at the door. Derek was there too, leaning against the kitchen island, and Patricia handed me the plastic-sleeved document with the same pleasant, organized energy she brought to everything. "We've been thinking about this for a while," she said. "We just want everyone to be on the same page about how things work." I took the list. I read it. All 17 rules. Rule 1. All visits must be scheduled and confirmed at least 10 business days in advance. Rule 2. Visits will not exceed 2 hours in duration unless extended by explicit invitation. Rule 3. Margaret will not arrive early or stay past the agreed-upon end time. Rule 4. Eli will be referred to as Eli, not by any alternative nickname. This one had been highlighted in yellow. Rule 5. No homemade food is to be brought into the home without prior disclosure of all ingredients. Rule 6. Margaret will not post photos of Eli to any social media platform without written permission obtained per visit. Rule 7. Margaret will not discuss the Carmichael family dynamics, including her divorce from Robert Carmichael, with Eli at any time. Rule 8. All gifts must be pre-approved in writing before being brought to visits. I will spare you rules 9 through 17. I'll just say that by the end, I had been given a formal protocol that treated me with less trust and more paperwork than a background-checked substitute teacher. I set the list on the counter. I smoothed it with my palm, and I looked at Derek. Derek was looking at the floor. "Did you read this?" I asked him. "Mom, I'm asking if you read it?" "We put it together," he said, which was not actually an answer to my question, but I let it go. I stayed for the visit. I held Eli, who was now 5 months old and had started to smile with his whole face, the way babies do when they're discovering that the world responds to them. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I asked Patricia about her sleep schedule, because sleep deprivation does things to people, and I was trying to extend every charitable interpretation available to me. I drove home. I sat in my car in my driveway for 22 minutes, and then I went inside. And I started going through the filing cabinet in my home office, the gray one next to the window that looks out onto my backyard garden, and I started pulling documents. Here's what you need to understand about the envelope and why it took me 3 weeks to put it together. I wasn't acting out of anger. I want to be clear about that, because I think people assume these kinds of stories are about revenge. They're not. This one wasn't. I was acting out of clarity. There's a difference. Anger is hot and fast and makes you say things you wish you could take back. Clarity is cold and slow and makes you say exactly the thing that needed to be said 20 years ago. What I pulled from that filing cabinet over the following 3 weeks was a record. Not a weapon. A record. I found the original tuition payment receipts from when I'd co-signed Derek's student loan at Ohio State, $8,400 for his freshman year, that I'd paid down over 4 years from my Apple Tree tips and my Harmon office supply salary, money Robert had never contributed. I found the receipts from the summer before Derek's senior year of high school, when his car, a 2001 Honda Civic, threw a timing belt and I'd paid $1,100 at Midas on Salem Avenue to have it fixed because Derek needed that car to get to his summer job. I found the Venmo records from the year Derek and Patricia were first engaged and were short on rent for 2 months. I had sent $600 in June of 2014 and $450 in August, money neither of them had ever mentioned repaying. I found receipts from the shower I'd hosted for Patricia, where I'd spent $380 on food and decorations, and a gift from the registry, the KitchenAid stand mixer in Empire Red that still sits on Patricia's counter. I wasn't compiling a bill. I want to say that again because it matters. I was not going to present them with an invoice. What I was doing was something quieter and more personal than that. I was reminding myself, in the way that only documentation can, that I had not imagined the life I'd built. That my presence in Derek's story was not incidental or peripheral. That I had been there, specifically, materially, with my hands and my time and my money, in ways that were real and measurable and true. The envelope I assembled had 3 things in it. The first was a letter. 4 pages, handwritten on the good stationery I'd bought at Paper Source 4 years ago and never used. I wrote it 3 times before I got it right. No accusations, no self-pity, no list of grievances, just a quiet, detailed account of my life with Derek, from Ellison Street to Ohio State to the timing belt to the wedding table, 7, and what I had understood that life to mean, and what I hoped it still meant, and what I needed from them, both in order to continue showing up in the way I had always shown up. I asked for one thing specifically: not more visits. Not an apology. Not the list to be rescinded, though I did say clearly and without drama that I would not be following it. I asked that Derek call me. Not text, not email. Call me. Once a week, the way he had in college, before Patricia, before things got complicated. Just a phone call. The second thing in the envelope was a photograph. It was a picture I had found in a box in my closet, a Kodak print from June of 1996, when Derek was 7 years old. We were at Eastwood Park in Dayton, just the 2 of us, on a Sunday afternoon when I had the day off from both jobs. Derek was on a swing, mid-arc, at the highest point, and his face was open and fearless and full of the specific joy that children have when they are being pushed by someone who loves them. I was in the frame, slightly out of focus, behind him. My hands were open, because I had just let go and he was flying. I had written on the back, "This is what I am. This is what I will always be. Whatever we decide to do from here." The third thing was a document. It was a printout of a bank statement from my savings account at Fifth Third Bank, the same institution where I'd started that college fund in 2003. The statement showed the current balance, $47,820. This was money I had been saving, quietly, steadily, over many years in an account I had designated, in a handwritten note on the file folder, as Eli's Education Fund. I had not told Derek this account existed. I had not told Patricia. I had not told anyone. I put those 3 things in a cream-colored envelope. I wrote Derek's name on the front. Not Derek and Patricia, just Derek. And I drove to Worthington on a Thursday morning when I knew Patricia would be at her 10 a.m. Pilates class, and Derek was working from home. Hold on for just a second, because I need to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you held something in your hands and you genuinely knew that what you were about to do was going to change things? That there was a before and there was about to be an after? Drop an hourglass in the comments if you know that feeling. I want to see how many of you have been there. Derek answered the door in his work-from-home clothes. Gray joggers, a blue fleece, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked surprised to see me. Not alarmed, just surprised. "Mom, hey, I didn't know you were coming." "I know, I'm sorry, I just need 5 minutes." He let me in. Biscuit patted over and pressed his nose into my hand, which I appreciated. The house was quiet. Eli was at Patricia's mother's. I'd checked the Instagram stories to confirm this, which I am not proud of but which I will not apologize for either. We stood in the kitchen. I held out the envelope. "I need you to read this," I said. "Not now. Later, when you have time. But I need you to actually read it." Derek took it. He looked at it. He looked at me. His expression was complicated in a way I hadn't seen on my son's face since he was 12 years old, checking the mailbox. "Mom, if this is about the rules..." "Derek." I said his name the way I had learned to say it in the years after Robert left, quietly, with weight, not as a question. "It's a letter. It's a photo. And it's a bank statement. That's all. There's no argument in here. There's no ultimatum. I just need you to read it." He nodded. He held the envelope with both hands, the way you hold something when you're not sure yet whether it's heavy. "Okay," he said. "Okay," I said. I scratched Biscuit behind the ears. I walked to the door, and then I stopped and turned back, because there was one more thing I needed to say, and I had written it in the letter, but I also needed to say it out loud. I pushed you on that swing in Eastwood Park when you were 7 years old, I said. And when you got high enough, I let go. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You let go so they can fly. But Derek, just because I let go doesn't mean I left. He was quiet for 5 seconds. I counted. Then he said, very quietly, I know, Mom. I walked to my car. I sat in it for 8 minutes. Then I drove to a Panera on Bethel Road, and I ate a bowl of broccoli cheddar soup by myself, and I looked out the window at the parking lot, and I thought, whatever happens next, I did the right thing. I drove home to my house on Crestwood Drive in Grandview Heights. I had moved there in 2016, a small house with a big backyard garden and a study with gray filing cabinets and a window, and I waited. 3 days passed. 4. I did not call Derek. I did not text. I planted the first of my spring bulbs in the back garden, which is what I do when I am managing something I cannot control. I planted 42 tulip bulbs in a row along the fence, each one pressed down into the cold October soil with both hands. There is something clarifying about putting things in the ground and trusting that they'll come up. On the 5th day, my phone rang. Thursday, 7:42 p.m. Derek. I let it ring once, then I picked up. Hey, Mom. Hey, Bud. I had not called him Bud in years. It came out without me planning it. There was a pause. Then he said, I read the letter. I figured. I read it twice. Okay. Another pause, longer. I heard him exhale. I didn't know about the college account, the savings account for Eli. I know you didn't. Mom, his voice cracked on the word. Just a little, just enough. I don't, I've been. He stopped, tried again. I've been letting things happen that I should have. I should have said something about the list. I should have said something before she gave it to you. I sat down on the couch. Outside, it was dark. My neighbor's porch light was on. Did you agree with it? I asked. The list. Silence. Then some of it made sense to me. The scheduling thing. Patricia has a really specific routine with Eli, and I know that's. He stopped again. But no, not all of it. Rule 4. His voice got quieter. I should have said something about Rule 4. Rule 4 was the nickname rule. The nickname in question was Bear. I had called Derek Bear since he was 2 years old, and got hold of a stuffed bear at the church rummage sale, and refused to put it down for 3 weeks. I had started calling Eli Little Bear from the first time I held him, without thinking, because it came from somewhere so deep in me that it was automatic. Patricia said it was confusing for Eli. Derek said. Different names from different people. He's 7 months old, Derek. I know. He doesn't know his own name yet. I know, Mom. We were quiet together for a moment. It wasn't an uncomfortable quiet. It was the kind of quiet that only exists between people who have a long history, who have sat in cars together, and at kitchen tables together, and in hospital waiting rooms together, and who have learned that silence doesn't have to mean anything bad. I told Patricia I needed to talk to her, Derek said finally. About all of it. I told her tonight before I called you. How did that go? It's a process. He exhaled again. She's not. Mom, I want you to understand that Patricia isn't trying to hurt you. She's not a malicious person. She has a very particular idea of how things should go, and when things don't go that way, she tightens the controls, I said. A small pause. Yeah, I know, I said. I figured that out. The bank statement, he said. The education fund. How long have you been doing that? I started it the month after Eli was born, I said. October 2021. I've been putting in $200 a month. Mom, it's for him, I said. It's not leverage, Derek. I need you to understand that. It was never meant to be leverage. The only reason it's in the envelope is because I wanted you to know, I wanted you to see in writing, that I am in this. I am committed to this family. I am not going anywhere. That account exists because I believe Eli is going to need things that cost money, and I want to be one of the people who helps provide those things. That's all. I heard Derek swallow. I'm sorry, he said. I'm really sorry, Mom. I let the apology sit for a moment. The way you let a stone settle to the bottom of water. I know, I said. I love you. Call me Sunday. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I will. The conversation with Patricia took longer. Not because she was unwilling. I'll give her this. Patricia Holt Carmichael is not a coward, but because the things that needed to be said between us were layered in ways that a single phone call couldn't reach. Derek had spoken to her about the letter, and she had read it. He told me this on the Sunday call he kept, the first of what became a weekly ritual again. She had read the letter, and she had been his word quiet for a long time afterward. Which, for Patricia, I had come to understand was a significant reaction. Patricia was not a quiet person by nature. Patricia organized and scheduled and controlled because silence was, for her, a kind of free fall. She called me herself on a Wednesday morning in the third week of November. I was in my backyard, drinking coffee, watching a cardinal on the fence. Margaret, no preamble, just my name. I'd like to talk, if you have time. I have time, I said. We talked for an hour and 40 minutes. I will not transcribe it in full, because some of what was said belongs to the two of us, and because some of what Patricia told me about her own childhood, and her own mother and her own fear, it turned out, was the engine of all of it, fear that she was not doing it right, fear that there were too many people with opinions and not enough space for her to find her own footing. Some of that is hers to tell, not mine. What I'll say is that by the end of that hour and 40 minutes, I understood Patricia better than I had in 7 years of knowing her, and I think she understood me better too. There was a moment about an hour in where she said, "I didn't know you called Derek Bear. He never told me that." I said, "He never told you?" She said, "He doesn't. Derek doesn't talk about his childhood very much. I know there were hard times, but he doesn't talk about them." I said, "I know. He never has. He processed things quietly and moved on. It's one of the things I love most about him, and also one of the things that has made loving him complicated." There was a small surprised pause on her end, and then Patricia said, That's exactly it." We sat with that for a moment. "The list," I said then, because I needed to say it. "Patricia, the list felt like you were telling me I was a threat, that I needed to be managed." "I know," she said. "I know that's how it—" She stopped. "I was trying to create structure. I'm not good at informal. I'm not good at just letting things unfold. I need parameters, and instead of talking to you about what I needed, I just—" Another pause. "I laminated it." She said it with a kind of rueful flatness that surprised a laugh out of me. Just a small one. But she heard it, and I heard her exhale slightly, and something in the room, the distance between us, the accumulated tension of those 17 rules shifted just a little. "The nickname?" I said. "Eli can be called Eli. I understand that. But can Little Bear can that be mine? Just when it's me and him?" A long pause. Then, "Yes, I think that's okay." "Thank you," I said. "Here's where the story takes a turn that I didn't expect, and that I think you need to hear." 2 weeks after that phone call, in early December, Derek called me on a Sunday morning, our scheduled call, and told me he'd been going back through some things. Old things. He'd found a box of stuff from his childhood in the closet of his home office. I had given it to him when he bought the house in Worthington, a box of school papers and sports photos and birthday cards. He'd never opened it. He'd opened it. He called me that Sunday from his office, and he read me the card I had given him on his 12th birthday. I don't remember exactly what I wrote. I wrote a lot of cards over a lot of years, but he read it to me and I listened, and by the time he finished I was sitting on the floor of my kitchen with my back against the cabinet, and I was crying. Not the careful, managed crying I had been doing for months. Real crying. "I didn't know you felt all that," he said. "Some of what you wrote, about wanting me to fly, I didn't realize that came from somewhere specific." "It came from watching your dad leave," I said. Which was not something I had ever said that directly before. "I never wanted to hold on so tight that you felt trapped. So I learned to let go. Maybe I let go a little too easily sometimes. Maybe you needed me to hold on longer and I didn't." He was quiet for a moment. "You got it right, Mom," he said. "You got it more right than you know." Christmas of 2022. Let me paint you a picture. I pulled into Derek and Patricia's driveway in Worthington at 3 in the afternoon on December 24th. My car had a wreath on the front grille. I always do that, Every year, a $5 wreath from Giant Eagle. The Christmas lights on their house were white and tasteful, Patricia's choice, and the wreath on the door was a professional one with a velvet ribbon. I had brought two things: a bottle of Bordeaux that the woman at the wine shop had helped me select and said was appropriate for a nice dinner, and a small stuffed bear. Not a fancy bear. A simple brown bear from the toy store on Fifth Avenue in Columbus, with a little bow around its neck, and a tag that I had written on myself. The tag said, "For Little Bear from Grandma Maggie." With all the room in the world. Patricia answered the door. She looked at the stuffed bear. Her expression was complicated. And then it wasn't. It resolved into something quieter. She stepped back to let me in. Aisha was in the living room in a little red Christmas outfit, sitting on a blanket surrounded by the soft carnage of already opened presents. He looked up when I walked in, and his face, his father's face, that open, fearless face, broke into the grin that 7-month-old's perfect, the full-body grin that starts in the feet. I sat down on the floor next to him. I held up the stuffed bear. "This is for you," I said softly, "from Grandma Maggie." He grabbed it with both hands and immediately tried to put its ear in his mouth, which I took as a deeply positive review. Patricia sat down across from me on the floor, and for a moment it was just the three of us and Biscuit the dog, who was investigating the wrapping paper with professional interest. Derek came in from the kitchen with a glass of wine for me. The good wine already opened, and sat on the couch and watched us, and his expression was the one I had been waiting to see for 2 years, settled, open, present. I did not say anything philosophical. I did not give a speech. I sat on the floor and I played with my grandson on Christmas Eve, and I drank a glass of wine, and I was, for the first time in a long time, simply and completely there. Later, when Eli had gone down, and Derek and Patricia and I were sitting at the kitchen table with the remains of a cheese board between us, Patricia said, "I threw the list away." I looked up. "The laminated one," she said. She held my gaze. "I threw it away in November. I should have told you sooner." "Okay," I said. I'm going to be honest with you, Margaret. I'm probably still going to be better at email than phone calls, and I'm still going to need some heads up before visits. Not 10 business days, but I'll call first," I said. "That's fair. That's actually fair. And I want." She stopped. Seemed to be looking for words. "I want Eli to know you. I want him to know about Ellison Street, and the swing, and the chicken and noodles. I want him to know where Derek came from. I didn't have that. My family was all about where we were going, never where we came from, and I think that's a gap. I think that's a real gap." I looked at my son. He was watching his wife with an expression I recognized, the expression of someone who has been surprised by the person they thought they knew. "It is a gap," I said. "I'd like to help fill it." Patricia nodded. Not a big nod. A small, considered one. The kind that means more than the large ones. "I want to stop here and ask you something directly. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of something like this, if you're the grandmother being handed a list, or if you're the daughter-in-law who made the list, or if you're the son standing by the refrigerator not meeting anyone's eyes, I want you to drop a heart in the comments. Because I believe, genuinely, that these situations are almost never about cruelty. They're about fear, and about the terrible human tendency to manage fear by controlling the things around us. And I think that's worth naming. Drop a heart if that lands for you. Now let me tell you where I am today. It is March. My tulips came up in late April of last year, all 42 of them, red and yellow and a deep orange that was labeled apricot on the package, but came out something closer to flame. I cut 6 of them and put them in a mason jar and drove to Worthington and left them on the porch. Patricia texted me a photo of Eli holding one, looking at it with the concentrated seriousness that toddlers bring to all investigations. He is 2.5 years old now. He says about 40 words. 3 of them are Grandma Maggie. He says it as one word, Grandma Maggie, the way little children collapse the things they love into single, urgent syllables. Derek calls me every Sunday. Not every call is long. Sometimes it's 11 minutes while he's driving somewhere, and we just talk about nothing in particular. What's on TV, whether the Buckeyes have a chance this year, what I'm planting in the garden. But it's consistent. It's hours. Patricia and I have reached a kind of equilibrium that I did not know was possible, and that I would not trade now for anything easier. It is not warmth exactly, not the warmth I have with Derek, the warmth built from shared history and decades of small moments. It is something more like mutual respect, which I have come to understand is its own kind of intimacy. She is a good mother. She is organized and attentive, and she reads to Eli every night, and she takes his feelings seriously, in a way that I think is going to serve him beautifully when he is 12, and checking the mailbox for a father who doesn't call. He will know, in a way Derek didn't always know, that his feelings are worth paying attention to. The education fund is now at $53,000. I added Patricia's name to the paperwork as a co-beneficiary, which surprised her when I told her in a text last August. She called me back within 4 minutes, which is the fastest Patricia has ever called me back, and said simply, "You didn't have to do that." I said, "I know, that's why I did it." Gerald and Connie are still the Holts. We still sit at different metaphorical tables. But Connie brought me a bottle of honey from her friend's farm stand last fall, left it on my porch with a card, which is more than I expected. I wrote her a thank you note on the paper source stationery. These small exchanges will probably always be the outer edge of what we are to each other, and I've made peace with that. Here is what I've been thinking about in the months since all of this settled. I spent a long time believing that love was demonstrated through sacrifice, through giving up the Sunday calls when Patricia needed Derek's full attention, through not objecting to Table 7, through laminate silence in the face of laminated lists. I thought that was what you did when you loved someone. You contracted. You made yourself smaller so they could be bigger. You let go before they asked you to, so they'd never have to ask. What I understand now is that I confused letting go with disappearing. Those are not the same thing. When I pushed Derek on that swing and let go, he flew. But I was still there. I was always still there in the frame, slightly out of focus, hands open. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. The envelope I put together was not a weapon, and it was not a performance. It was a record of presence. It was my way of saying, I was here, I am here, and here is what here looks like. Not with anger, not with demand, just with the quiet, documented, irrefutable fact of having shown up. I have come to believe that the most powerful thing you can do, in the face of being made to feel peripheral, is to be undeniably real. Not loud, not aggressive, not demanding, just real, specific, documented, present, and utterly clear about who you are and what you've given and what you're asking for in return. The laminated list asked me to make myself manageable. I chose instead to make myself legible. There is a difference. Manageable means you've been tamed. Legible means you've been read. I needed Derek to read me. He finally did. And I needed Patricia to read me too. She did too, in her own time, in her own way, in the language of control finally loosening just enough to let something real through. This isn't a story about revenge. I said that at the beginning, and I'll say it again at the end. This is not a revenge story. Revenge would have been sending them a bill for $14,200 plus decades of emotional labor. Revenge would have been posting the laminated list on the internet, though I'll admit I thought about it. Revenge is about diminishing someone else. That's not interesting to me. This is a story about architecture, about building something that can hold the weight of everything you love, about understanding that structures built on fear, 17 rules in a plastic sleeve, will always crack when they encounter something real. And the most loving thing I could do for Derek and for Patricia and for Little Bear was to be the thing that was real. My name is Margaret Carmichael. I am 64 years old. I live in Grandview Heights, Ohio, in a house with a garden that faces east and catches the morning light. My grandson calls me Grandma Maggie as one word. My son calls me every Sunday. My tulips came up flame-colored, and they were, I thought, exactly right. I'm still here. I'm still in the frame. My hands are still open. If this story found you at the right moment, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel, not because I need the number, but because there are more stories like this one, and I think they matter. There's something clarifying about hearing someone else's experience and recognizing your own shape in it. Leave me a comment. Tell me if you're the grandmother or the daughter-in-law or the son standing by the refrigerator. Tell me where you are in the world and what time it is. Tell me what you would have put in the envelope. I read every comment, not quickly, but eventually, the way I read everything carefully, with attention, trying to understand what someone is really saying under the words they chose. And if you want to hear the story about the Thanksgiving that finally broke the silence between me and Robert, Derek's father after 23 years, that one's in the description. It's different from this one. Quieter in some ways, louder in others. Thank you for being here. Take care of the people in your frame, even when they don't know you're still watching.